I am 65 years old, and my life nearly ended on my birthday in Texas. But not because of old age or illness or accident. No, my own daughter-in-law tried to poison me with a cake, thinking she'd inherit the pharmaceutical empire my late husband and I built from nothing. The most chilling part? She smiled while she handed me the slice. She thought she was clever. She thought I would take the first bite and collapse right there in front of my family. But something inside me, call it instinct, call it experience, call it God himself, made me switch plates at the last second with her sister. And within minutes, my daughter-in-law's own sister's body slumped forward, face first into the cake. Screams echoed through the dining room. People rushed forward. The smell of frosting mixed with fear. And in the chaos, my daughter-in-law's smile vanished. She realized something had gone terribly, terribly wrong. But here's the real shocker. I had installed security cameras all around the house weeks before. They captured every move, every whisper, every evil glance she thought no one saw. And when I stood up, pointing right at her, I said the words that froze her blood. It's all on camera. Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. Let me know where you are watching from. You don't know, you might be lucky to get a shout out on our next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel if you like stories like this. Now, let me take you back to the beginning, because betrayal like this doesn't come out of nowhere. It brews, it festers, it grows in shadows until one day, it explodes in the open. After my husband, Richard, passed away 3 years ago, I was left with everything we had built. Richard wasn't just a husband. He was my partner, my anchor, my reason for waking up. Together, we had started a small drugstore in Dallas. I still remember the smell of chalky medicine bottles, the way my hands would ache from standing behind the counter all day. But we worked hard. We were fair to people. We gave discounts when children needed medicine their parents couldn't afford. Slowly, that little store grew into a chain, then into a company. And before I knew it, we had a pharmaceutical empire spread across states. People saw the wealth. They saw the success. What they didn't see was the years of heartbreak behind it. The nights Richard stayed up coughing because we couldn't afford his asthma medicine before we made it. Or the times I had to choose between paying the bills and buying groceries. I never wanted my children or grandchildren to suffer that way. But money changes people. It exposes them. It makes masks fall off. My son, Michael, had always been bright. I poured everything into him. Private schools, college, even helped him start a small business of his own. But Michael married a woman named Amanda. Beautiful on the outside, polite when she needed to be, but I always felt a chill around her. A hunger. She had a way of watching me, not like a mother-in-law, but like a wolf watches a deer. At first, I told myself it was my imagination. I wanted to believe she loved Michael for who he was, not for the fortune tied to our family name. But over the years, I began to notice things. She always asked about my health in a way that felt rehearsed. She volunteered to bring me tea, food, or medicine more than anyone else, as if waiting for the perfect chance to slip something into it. And she smiled a little too wide when I coughed or had to sit down. Still, I said nothing, because that's what mothers do. We swallow our doubts and hope for the best. Then came the week of my birthday. I didn't want a big celebration, but Michael insisted. "Mom, you only turned 65 once," he said. He and Amanda planned everything. The decorations, the catering, even the cake. The morning of my birthday, I woke up uneasy. My chest felt heavy, not from sickness, but from a strange dread I couldn't shake. Richard always used to say, "Trust your gut. It knows before you do." I didn't know it yet, but my gut was about to save my life. When the party started, the house filled with laughter, the sound of children running, and the clinking of glasses. But my eyes kept going back to Amanda. She was too calm, too rehearsed. And when the cake came out, a beautiful 3-layer chocolate cake with white frosting, she was the one holding the knife. Everyone clapped as she cut the first slice. And that's when I noticed it. Her hand trembled slightly when she set a piece down in front of me. Only me. I stared at that plate, at the frosting, at her eager eyes watching me. And then, as if guided by Richard himself, I smiled, reached across the table, and swapped my plate with her sister's. The moment her sister's fork touched the cake, Amanda's eyes widened. Just a fraction. Just enough for me to know. Minutes later, the room erupted into chaos. And as her sister collapsed, Amanda's mask finally cracked. But what Amanda didn't know was that this was only the beginning of her nightmare. Because I had been ready for her. The cameras were rolling, and I was no helpless grandmother. I was the woman who built an empire from nothing, and I was about to protect it with everything I had. Screams filled the dining room. Plates clattered against the polished oak table as chairs scraped back in panic. Amanda's sister, Kelly, was slumped over, her fork still clutched in one limp hand. Chocolate smeared her lips as her chest heaved violently, her breath shallow, rapid, and then slower. Someone shouted to call 911. Children began crying. The happy birthday banners on the wall suddenly looked like cruel decorations mocking the moment. Amanda's face went pale. She tried to stand, then sit again, her hands twitching as though she didn't know what to do. But I was watching her closely. Her eyes weren't on Kelly. They were darting to me, scanning my reaction. I stayed still, calm, cold. My heart hammered inside my chest, but my face remained unreadable. That was one thing life had taught me. Never let your enemies see you panic. My son, Michael, knelt beside Kelly. "Mom, call an ambulance," he shouted. "I already did," I said softly, my eyes never leaving Amanda. The room was frantic. People rushed around, voices overlapped, phones rang. But I noticed Amanda had taken a small step back, distancing herself from the chaos. Her arms crossed tightly, her lips pressed together. She looked trapped. I finally stood. My knees shook slightly, but my voice was steady as stone. "Amanda," I said, my tone slicing through the noise, "would you like to explain what's happening?" Heads turned. Every eye landed on her. Michael looked up, confusion flashing across his face. Amanda blinked. Then she put her hands up in mock defense. What do you mean? I don't know what's going on. This is horrible." But her voice cracked, and I knew. I took a step closer to her. The cameras know the truth. Every corner of this house has eyes, Amanda, and they've been watching you. Gasps filled the room. My granddaughter, little Sophie, whispered, "Grandma has cameras?" Amanda's lips parted, but no words came out. Her skin went ghost white. She looked like someone had ripped the ground from beneath her feet. That was the moment I saw it, the shift. She realized she wasn't in control anymore. The paramedics rushed in, cutting the tension like a blade. They pulled Kelly onto a stretcher, slipping an oxygen mask over her face. The family followed them out the door in a flurry of panic, Michael holding his head with both hands, muttering, "Oh God, oh God." And suddenly, the huge dining room was quiet again. Just me, Amanda, and the birthday cake. The silence was heavier than any scream. Amanda swallowed hard. You can't prove anything," she whispered, her voice shaking. I leaned in close, my breath brushing her ear. "Oh, Amanda," I said softly, "I don't need to prove anything tonight. The cameras will do it for me." Her eyes darted around, searching for the little black lenses she'd never noticed before. And then, the front door burst open again. It was Michael, his face flushed, his voice trembling. "Mom," he said, pointing at me with a shaky hand, "the doctors think." Kelly wasn't the target. The room spun with his words. Amanda froze, her mouth slightly open. My heart slammed in my chest. Michael's voice cracked as he said the words I already knew deep inside. "They think someone tried to poison you." The air left the room. Amanda staggered back, gripping the edge of the table, her lips trembling. And I knew this was only the beginning of the storm. Michael's words rang in my ears like church bells at midnight. "They think someone tried to poison you." I felt the eyes of my family drilling into me, searching for answers, demanding explanations. My knees weakened, and for the first time that night, I allowed myself to sit back down in my chair. My birthday cake sat untouched before me, a beautiful, deadly centerpiece mocking the chaos it had caused. Amanda stood frozen, her fingers still gripping the edge of the table, her knuckles white. I could see her mind working, fast and desperate, But for once, she had no script prepared. Michael stepped closer to me. His voice cracked. Mom, what's going on? Why would anyone? He trailed off, his eyes sliding toward Amanda. Amanda quickly cut him off. Don't look at me like that, Michael. You think I'd poison your mother? Really? After everything? Her tone was high-pitched, desperate, dripping with fake innocence. But I stayed silent. Silence is powerful. Silence makes guilty people trip over their own lies. Finally, I spoke, my words slow and heavy. The cameras will tell us everything. No one has to argue. The truth is already recorded. Amanda's face twitched. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The sound of sirens grew distant as the ambulance carried Kelly away. Family members lingered in the hallway, whispering nervously, watching me, watching Amanda. The birthday party was over. What was supposed to be a celebration had turned into a battlefield. Later that night, at the hospital, we all sat in the waiting room under the harsh fluorescent lights. Kelly was in critical condition. The doctors worked on her for hours, flushing her system, trying to keep her stable. Michael sat with his head in his hands, his elbows on his knees. How did this happen? He muttered over and over. His voice was broken, small. I wanted to comfort him, but I couldn't bring myself to. Not yet. Not while his wife sat across from me, staring at the tiled floor with her arms crossed tightly. I leaned back in my chair, my eyes never leaving Amanda. She avoided my gaze, but I noticed her tapping her fingers nervously against her arm. Finally, I broke the silence. Amanda, I said softly, almost gently, you baked that cake, didn't you? Her head snapped up. No, the caterer did. I only helped set it up. Michael looked at her, his brow furrowed. But you told me you baked it yourself. The waiting room grew even colder. Amanda stammered, her face flushing. I supervised. That's what I meant. Oh my God, Michael, why are you looking at me like that? I stayed quiet again, letting her drown in her own contradictions. Hours passed. A nurse finally came out, telling us Kelly was stable for now. Relief washed through the room, but tension remained thick. That night, when I returned home, I locked myself in my study. I poured myself a glass of water, sat at my desk, and pulled up the footage from the hidden cameras. One by one, the files opened, and there she was, Amanda, in my kitchen hours before the party. She wasn't just frosting the cake. She was carefully sprinkling something from a small silver packet into the batter. She looked over her shoulder twice, checking if anyone was watching. But the cameras never blink. My stomach tightened as I watched her smooth the frosting over, sealing her crime with a smile. I sat frozen, my hand trembling against the mouse. I had proof, undeniable proof. But as I replayed the footage again, something else caught my eye. Something far worse. Amanda wasn't alone in the kitchen. Someone else walked in. And when I saw who it was, my blood ran cold. It wasn't just Amanda. She had a partner. The video played in silence, the faint hum of the computer the only sound in my study. Amanda bent over the cake, carefully smoothing frosting across the poisoned surface. And then the kitchen door swung open. I leaned closer, my breath caught in my throat. It was Michael, my son, my own flesh and blood. He stepped inside casually, glancing around like a man who had nothing to hide. He walked right up to Amanda, placed a hand on her shoulder, and whispered something that made her smirk. Then, together, they stood over the cake. Amanda lifted the small silver packet again, and Michael nodded. Not once did he look afraid. Not once did he hesitate. He knew, and he approved. I felt the world tilt under me. My hand pressed against my chest as a heavy pain spread through me, sharper than any knife Amanda could have hidden. Betrayal wasn't new to me. I had faced it in business, with friends, even with distant relatives, but from Michael, my only son, I slammed the laptop shut, unable to look any longer. My mind swirled. Questions stabbed at me. Why would Michael do this? Didn't he have enough? Hadn't I given him everything? That night, I didn't sleep. Every tick of the clock was a hammer against my ribs. My husband's voice echoed in my memory. Protect what we built. Protect it, even from the ones closest to you. I never imagined those words would apply to our own child. The next morning, I drove back to the hospital. Kelly was awake, though weak, her body trembling as she tried to sip water. She looked at me with tired eyes. "Why me?" she whispered, her voice raspy. I squeezed her hand gently, my throat tight. "It wasn't supposed to be you, sweetheart." Amanda was sitting in the corner, her face pale and her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She hadn't left the hospital overnight, which only added to her disguise of concern. Michael sat beside her, holding her hand. His eyes flicked up at me, full of tension. I studied them both. They looked like a grieving couple, worried about a family member. But I knew the truth. I had seen it with my own eyes. Michael finally broke the silence. "Mom, we need to talk." I nodded, keeping my face calm. "Yes, Michael. We do." We stepped into the hallway, leaving Amanda behind. He rubbed his hands together nervously. "Look, Mom, I know things looked strange last night, but we have to stay united as a family. People are already whispering. The business, the company, if this scandal leaks, everything Dad built could collapse." The nerve of him, talking about unity while plotting my death. I tilted my head. "So what are you suggesting, Michael?" He hesitated, then said, "Let's keep this quiet, for the family's sake." My heart cracked again. Not only was he guilty, he wanted to bury the truth. I leaned closer, whispering, "The family's sake or yours?" His jaw tightened. His eyes flicked away. And that was all the answer I needed. The hours dragged on, heavy and suffocating. Kelly remained in critical condition, but stable. Family members came and went, their whispers, a background hum I barely registered. I couldn't focus on small talk anymore. My mind replayed the footage over and over. Michael and Amanda standing together like vultures over my grave. That evening, as the sun set behind the hospital windows, Amanda stepped out to grab coffee. Michael followed her. I stayed behind with Kelly, pretending to doze in the chair. But I wasn't asleep. And when Amanda and Michael thought the hallway was empty, I heard their voices clearly. "Are you insane?" Amanda hissed. "She suspects everything." Michael's voice was sharp. "Calm down. She doesn't have proof." Amanda's reply was icy. "Then we'd better make sure she never gets it." My blood froze. They weren't finished. They were planning something worse. And this time, I might not get a chance to switch plates. My heart pounded in my chest as I sat frozen in that hospital chair, pretending to sleep while their words crawled into my bones like poison. "We'd better make sure she never gets it." Amanda's voice echoed in my head, the certainty in it, the coldness, the lack of hesitation. And Michael, my son, hadn't argued. He hadn't even flinched. I waited until their footsteps faded down the hall before I opened my eyes. The beeping machines around Kelly filled the silence. She was asleep again, her breathing shallow but steady. I stared at her frail body and felt guilt crush me. That plate should have been mine. I whispered to her, "Though she couldn't hear me, I'll fix this. I promise you." Hours later, I returned home, the night sky hanging heavy over Dallas. My mansion felt colder than ever. The chandeliers sparkled, the marble floors shined, but the house was no longer a home. It was a cage filled with betrayal. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in my study again. I opened the laptop, replaying the footage. Over and over, I watched Michael and Amanda. The way she poured the poison, the way he nodded, the way they looked at each other with something worse than love, shared greed. Tears slipped down my cheeks, but I didn't wipe them away. I let them fall. For the first time in my life, I felt the true meaning of heartbreak. Not from losing a husband, not from poverty or struggle, but from realizing that the child you gave your life to raise would rather see you dead than wait his turn. I thought back to the early years, when Richard and I were still struggling. When Michael was a boy who'd run into the pharmacy after school, his backpack bouncing as he rushed to tell me about his day. I remembered staying up late to help him with homework, whispering encouragement before his exams, watching him graduate with pride swelling in my chest. Where had that boy gone? Was he gone forever? Or had he always been this way? Hiding behind a smile until money brought out the monster? The questions ate at me. But I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Mr. Jennings. He was an old family friend, someone who had helped Richard and me set up the company years ago. His voice was gruff but warm when he answered. Clara, he said. What's wrong? You don't sound like yourself. I told him everything. Not in full detail, not yet, but enough. Enough for him to understand I was in danger. Enough for him to know that my son and his wife couldn't be trusted. He sighed deeply. Clara, you need to protect yourself. Legally, financially, every way possible. If what you're saying is true, this could get ugly. I know, I whispered. He paused. Then his voice dropped lower. Do you have proof? My fingers brushed the laptop. Yes, I said. Good. Keep it safe. Don't let anyone near it. And Clara, don't eat or drink anything from them. Not a bite. Not a sip. His words sent a shiver down my spine. That afternoon, I stayed home, curtains drawn, doors locked. My phone buzzed constantly. Calls from Michael, texts from Amanda, even messages from relatives asking about Kelly. I ignored most of them. I needed time to think, to plan. But late in the evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, I heard it. A sound that didn't belong. A soft click at the back door. I froze. Slowly I stood, moving quietly across the marble floor. My heart hammered in my ears as I grabbed the fire poker from beside the fireplace. Step by step, I approached the kitchen. And then I saw it, the doorknob turning. Someone was trying to get in. I held my breath, clutching the poker so tightly my knuckles turned white. The door creaked open, and standing there, silhouetted in the fading light, was Amanda. Her eyes locked on mine, and in her hand she held a knife. The knife glinted in Amanda's hand, catching the last streak of sunlight that slipped through the glass. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. The air between us was thick, silent, and sharp. My chest rose and fell, each breath trembling but steady. She thought she was a predator, but I wasn't prey. Not tonight. Why are you here, Amanda? I asked, my voice low, steady like a teacher scolding a child. Her lips curled into something between a smirk and a sneer. Why do you think, Clara? She stepped inside, slowly closing the door behind her. The click of the lock echoed through the kitchen, and my grip on the fire poker tightened. You should have just eaten the cake, she said, twirling the knife like she was rehearsing a performance. It would have been easier for everyone. My blood ran cold, but I kept my voice calm. Everyone, or just you and Michael? Her smile faltered for a moment, but she recovered quickly, tilting her head. He doesn't know I'm here. That admission cut deeper than the knife in her hand ever could. Even Michael, with his betrayal, hadn't dared to come this far. Amanda was acting on her own now, reckless, desperate. She took another step forward, her heels tapping against the marble floor. Do you know what it's like, Clara? To marry into a family where you're always second best? Where everyone whispers that you're only there for the money? Her voice rose, edged with venom. I've given Michael everything, and still, I'm treated like trash. But when you're gone, that all changes. Her eyes gleamed as she lifted the knife higher. I raised the poker, steadying my stance. You think killing me will solve your problems? You think money will fill that hole inside you? Amanda, it won't. It never does. For a moment, her expression flickered. Just for a moment, I saw a trace of doubt. A trace of the little girl she must have once been before greed swallowed her whole. But then she lunged. I swung the poker hard. The clang of metal on metal rang out as I deflected her strike. Sparks of adrenaline surged through my veins. She stumbled back, cursing under her breath, then charged again. This time, I sidestepped, slamming the poker down on the table. The vibration rattled my arms, but the sound was enough to startle her. She froze, panting, knife trembling in her hand. We stood there, breathing heavily, facing each other across the kitchen. Then, suddenly, headlights swept across the windows. A car pulled into the driveway. Amanda's eyes widened. Michael, she whispered. The front door opened. His voice rang out, Mom? Amanda? What's going on? I glanced at Amanda. She glanced at me. And in that split second, she made her choice. She dropped the knife onto the counter, forcing a panicked expression onto her face. She darted toward the living room, shouting, Clara tried to attack me. The knife gleamed on the counter, abandoned but not forgotten. And Michael was walking into the house. Michael, Amanda cried, rushing into the living room like a wounded actress stumbling onto the stage. She clutched her arm dramatically, eyes wide with fake terror. Your mother, she tried to kill me. Michael froze by the doorway, his keys still in hand. His eyes darted from Amanda to me, where I stood in the kitchen doorway, gripping the fire poker, my breath ragged. His gaze landed on the knife glinting on the counter. For a long, awful moment, the silence between us was louder than any scream. I lowered the poker slowly, letting it rest against the floor. Michael, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. She came here with that knife. She locked the door. She was going to finish what the cake started. Amanda's voice cracked like shattered glass. She's lying. Look at her. She's holding the poker. She swung it at me. She clutched Michael's arm, shaking him. You have to believe me. You know your mother's paranoid. She's always thought I was out to get her. Michael's eyes narrowed, bouncing between us. His face was pale, his jaw tight. I could see the war inside him. Son against husband, blood against marriage. Michael, I said softly, carefully, like I used to when he was a boy frightened of the dark. Do you remember what your father always told you? The truth doesn't whisper, it screams. Look at her. Really look at her. Do you hear truth in her voice, or desperation? Amanda's lips quivered, but she gripped his arm tighter. Don't let her twist this. She's trying to drive us apart, so she can control everything. Michael's chest rose and fell. Heavy. He pulled his arm free from Amanda's grip, rubbing his forehead. I don't know what to believe. The words stabbed deeper than any blade. I took a step forward, keeping my voice calm but firm. Then believe the cameras, Michael. The same cameras that caught her in the kitchen with the poison. His head snapped toward me. Cameras? Amanda stiffened. I saw her mask crack for just a second before she smoothed it over again. Yes, I continued. Every room, every hallway. They've seen everything you thought was hidden. My eyes locked on his. Even you. His face drained of color. He took a step back as if I had struck him. What do you mean, me? Amanda's breath hitched. She's bluffing, she whispered quickly, clutching his sleeve again. Don't listen. I cut her off, my words sharp as a blade. I saw you in the kitchen with her, Michael. I saw you nod. I saw you approve. Tell me, were you going to watch me die on my own birthday? His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The silence stretched until it felt unbearable. Then, outside, tires screeched against gravel. Headlights flooded through the windows. Another car pulled into the driveway. Amanda's eyes widened with panic. Michael's face twisted in confusion, and my stomach dropped when I realized who it was. The police. Someone had called them, and I had no idea whose side they would take. Red and blue lights flashed through the tall windows of my living room, painting the walls in restless color. The sound of radios crackled as two officers stepped through the open front door, hands resting on their holsters. Dallas PD, one of them announced firmly. We got a call about a disturbance. Amanda practically leapt forward, her face contorting into a mask of terror. Oh, thank God you're here, she cried, pointing directly at me. She tried to attack me. Look, she still has the weapon. I glanced down. The fire poker was still in my hand. My fingers had gone numb around it. The taller officer's gaze swept over the room, landing on me. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to set that down. Slowly, I placed the poker against the wall. My voice was calm, almost too calm. Officers, you should know, Amanda came into my home tonight, uninvited. She locked the door behind her, and she was holding a knife. That's a lie. Amanda shrieked, clutching Michael's arm like a lifeline. She's dangerous, she's paranoid. She's been accusing me of the most insane things lately. The shorter officer stepped toward the counter, his eyes narrowing on the knife glinting under the kitchen light. He slid it into an evidence bag. Whose is this? He asked. Amanda's hand shot up. It's hers. She pulled it on me. I laughed, low, bitter, tired. Officers, I've lived in this house for over 20 years. Do you really think I'd need to grab a kitchen knife when I had a poker in my hand already? That knife came in with her. Michael finally spoke, his voice shaky. We don't know that for sure. The words twisted inside me like a dagger. The taller officer looked between us. Okay, let's slow this down. We've got two very different stories here. Maybe we should step outside, separate everyone, and... Wait, Amanda interrupted, her voice trembling with perfect false fragility. There's more. You need to know what she's been doing. She turned to the officers, her eyes glistening. She's been spying on us. She has cameras hidden all over this house, watching us, recording us. It's sick. The officer's eyebrows rose. One of them scribbled something in his notebook. Amanda pressed on, her voice dripping with desperation, disguised as sincerity. She's not well. She's obsessed with control, obsessed with the business. She thinks we're out to get her, but it's all in her head. I'm scared to even live here anymore. Her performance was flawless. If I hadn't seen the footage with my own eyes, I might have doubted myself. The taller officer turned to me. Ma'am, is that true? Do you have surveillance inside your home? I met his eyes, holding his gaze steady. Yes, I said firmly. And those cameras don't lie. They've recorded everything Amanda doesn't want you to see. Amanda's mask slipped for just a second. Her lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes flashing with fury. The officer exchanged a glance with his partner. All right, then we'll need to see those recordings. If there's evidence, it should clear this up. My chest rose and fell. This was the moment. I could show them everything. The poison, the plot, Michael's betrayal. But then my eyes fell on my son. Michael. He wasn't looking at me. He wasn't looking at Amanda. He was staring at the floor, his hands clenched tight, his whole body trembling. If I played that footage now in front of the police, his life would be over. My only son. And for the first time, I hesitated. Amanda saw it. She pounced. See, she doesn't want you to look, because there's nothing there. The officers turned toward me expectantly, and that's when the sound tore through the room. A loud crash from the backyard, glass shattering. Someone else was trying to break in. The crash rattled through the house like thunder. Everyone froze. Amanda's false tears, Michael's trembling silence, the officers' pens scratching against their pads, all replaced by the sharp sound of breaking glass. The taller officer whipped around. Stay here, he barked, his hand flying to his holster as both officers rushed toward the back hallway. I stood rooted to the floor, my heart slamming in my chest. Amanda gasped dramatically and clung to Michael's arm, though for once the fear in her eyes looked real. We all listened as the officer's footsteps pounded against the tile. Then came the unmistakable sound of someone shouting, "Stop! Police!" followed by the scuffle of boots and a grunt of pain. Michael stepped back, pulling Amanda with him, his face pale. What the hell is going on? But I didn't answer, because deep down I already knew. The officers returned minutes later, dragging a man in handcuffs between them. His face was bruised, his clothes dirty, but I recognized him instantly. It was Eddie, a name I hadn't heard in years. Richard's former business partner. The same man who had tried to sue us 20 years ago, claiming we stole his ideas. The same man who swore he'd ruin us when he lost in court. The sight of him in my house made bile rise in my throat. One of the officers shoved him into a chair, caught him crawling through the back window. Care to explain what he's doing here? Eddie spat on the floor, glaring at me with eyes that hadn't softened in decades. You've had this coming, Clara. Should have finished you off when I had the chance. Amanda stiffened beside Michael. I saw the way her eyes flicked toward Eddie. Too quick, too nervous. And then it clicked. Amanda wasn't working alone. Not just with Michael. She had reached out to Eddie, the old snake who hated my husband, who hated me, who hated everything Richard and I had built. The officers looked at me, waiting for answers. But before I could speak, Amanda rushed forward. That's him. That's the man who's been harassing us. Clara's right. He must have broken in to plant that knife earlier. Oh my God, Michael, I told you we weren't safe. Her performance was smooth, her timing perfect. But Eddie laughed a low, bitter laugh that sent shivers down my spine. Don't you dare turn this on me, girl. You begged for my help. You said you wanted the old woman gone, and you needed someone who wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty. The room exploded with noise. Michael shouted, "What are you talking about?" The officers yelled for everyone to calm down. Amanda shrieked, "He's lying." But I stood in silence. My mind spun like a hurricane, every piece falling into place. Amanda's greed, Michael's weakness, Eddie's grudge. They weren't three separate problems. They were one. And I was standing at the center of the storm. The shorter officer finally slammed his hand against the table. "Enough. We're taking all of you down to the station until we can sort this out." Amanda's face drained of color. Michael muttered under his breath, pacing like a trapped animal. Eddie smirked, his eyes locked on me, as though he'd already won. And me, I only thought of one thing. The footage. The truth. It was my only weapon left. But when I glanced at the corner shelf where I'd hidden the external hard drive that held the backup recordings, it was gone. My blood ran cold. The small oak shelf in the corner was empty, the little space where I always tucked the backup drive now bare. My entire defense, the evidence of Amanda's poison, her whispers, her plotting was gone. And in its place, silence. I forced myself to look at each face. Amanda, biting her lip and wringing her hands as if she were the victim. Michael, shifting uneasily, avoiding my eyes. Eddie, smirking like the devil himself. One of them had taken it. I swallowed hard, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "Officers, the proof you're looking for was right there on that shelf. My backup drive. It held every second of footage you'd need to see. And now it's gone." The taller officer raised an eyebrow. "Are you saying someone here stole it?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Someone who knew it would destroy them." Amanda gasped, clutching her chest. "Oh, please. She'll say anything to save herself. What footage? What proof? She's making this up because she's guilty." But Eddie leaned forward in his chair, grinning wide. "Funny thing about evidence. It has a way of disappearing when you need it most. Shame, isn't it, Clara?" The officers exchanged glances. One of them muttered something into his radio. Meanwhile, Michael finally spoke, his voice shaking. "Mom, maybe you're mistaken. Maybe you just misplaced it." The word stung worse than a slap. Misplaced it? As if I didn't know every inch of my own house. As if my mind was slipping the way Amanda wanted them all to believe. I stepped closer to him, lowering my voice so only he could hear. "Michael, look me in the eye and tell me you didn't touch that drive." But he didn't look at me. He looked away. My stomach dropped. The officers began moving us toward the front door. "We'll need to bring everyone in, get formal statements. If there's missing property, we'll add that to the report." Amanda put on a show of nerves, dabbing her eyes with the corner of her sleeve. Eddie whistled low, enjoying every second. And Michael, my own son, walked out beside them with his head bowed, saying nothing. As they led us toward the police cars, a thought clawed its way through me. What if Michael hadn't just looked away out of guilt? What if Michael was the one who had taken the footage? The one person I'd been trying hardest to protect. The ride to the Dallas Police Department was silent, but it wasn't the kind of silence that brings peace. It was heavy, suffocating, every breath thick with tension. The sirens weren't on, but the flashing lights still bounced across the city streets, reminding me with every flicker that my world was collapsing. Amanda sat across from me in the back of the cruiser, her hands neatly folded in her lap, her face calm now that the spotlight was on me. Every so often, she'd dart her eyes at me with a sly smile, one the officers couldn't see. A smile that said, "Checkmate." Michael sat beside her, staring out the window like a lost child. His knee bounced nervously, and though his lips moved, he never let a single word out. I wanted to reach across, grab his hand, and shake him back to his senses. But I didn't, because right then, I wasn't sure if he was still my son, or Amanda's puppet. Eddie had been shoved into the other cruiser, handcuffed tighter than before. I could hear his voice faintly through the open window as he taunted the officers, escorting him. He was enjoying this, thriving in it. When we finally pulled into the station, the air smelled of burnt coffee and damp concrete. The officers split us apart immediately. Amanda was led down one hallway, Eddie down another, and Michael and I were placed in separate interview rooms. The walls were bare, the chair uncomfortable, the buzzing fluorescent light above humming like a dying wasp. I folded my hands on the table, breathing deeply, reminding myself of one thing Richard had always said: never let them see you break. The minute they think you're broken, you've already lost. The door creaked open, and the shorter officer entered with a notepad. His badge read Officer Riley. He sat across from me, his eyes tired but sharp. "Mrs. Clark," he began, his tone polite but firm, "we're trying to make sense of what happened tonight. So far, we've got 3 different stories, and none of them line up." "I imagine Amanda's was the most convincing," I said coolly. His eyebrow lifted slightly. "She's certainly emotional." I almost laughed. Emotional? Amanda didn't know the meaning of the word. Everything about her tears, her tremors, her gasps, they were rehearsed. A show for the audience. "Officer," I said, leaning forward, "Amanda has been plotting against me for months. She poisoned a cake meant for me on my birthday. The only reason I'm still alive is because her plan backfired. The cameras in my house caught everything. But now the backup drive is gone." Riley's pen tapped against the pad. "You're certain there were cameras?" "Yes," I said firmly. "They're hardwired. Check the system yourself. And when you do, you'll see Amanda for who she really is." He nodded slowly but didn't write it down. That told me all I needed to know. He already doubted me. "Mrs. Clark," he said carefully, "you understand how serious these accusations are. If you don't have the footage, all we've got are words." I held his gaze. "Then you better find that footage." He didn't reply. Instead, he rose, gathered his notes, and left me alone in the humming silence. Minutes later, maybe hours, I couldn't tell, the door opened again. This time it wasn't Riley. It was Michael, my son. They'd let him in, though his eyes darted nervously to the hallway behind him as if Amanda were waiting just out of sight. He closed the door quietly and sat across from me, his face pale. "Mom," he whispered. I looked at him, studying the boy I had raised into a man. He still had Richard's jawline, but his eyes, they were Amanda's now. Shifty, weak, always searching for approval. "Tell me the truth, Michael," I said softly. "Did you take the drive?" His lips parted, but no sound came. His fingers twisted together until his knuckles went white. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he whispered, "I had to." The air vanished from the room. "You had to," I repeated, my voice trembling. His eyes brimmed with tears. "She said if I didn't, she'd leave me. She said she'd tell everyone I was part of it, that I helped. I didn't know what else to do." I closed my eyes. Betrayal burned hotter than fire. My own son, my flesh and blood. He had chosen her lies over my truth. When I opened my eyes again, I saw him clearly. Not the boy I raised, not the child who once clung to my hand on the first day of school, but a man so weak he'd sell his soul just to keep Amanda's poison love. "Michael," I said, my voice cold as steel, "do you realize what you've done? Without that footage, I have nothing. Do you understand? Nothing." He broke then, his head falling into his hands. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. Sorry." The word felt meaningless. Before I could speak again, the door opened and Officer Riley returned. "All right," he said briskly. "Mrs. Clark, your time's up for now. We'll be in touch." He glanced at Michael. "Son, come with me." Michael obeyed instantly, like a dog following its master. And just like that, he was gone again. But as the door closed, I caught something, a glimpse of Amanda at the end of the hallway, watching. And in her hand, half hidden beneath her coat, was the missing hard drive. The glimpse of metal in Amanda's hand seared itself into my memory like a brand. The missing hard drive, the very thing that could prove my innocence and her guilt, was tucked neatly under her coat as though it belonged to her all along. She didn't even flinch when our eyes met. Instead, she tilted her head, almost smiling, before turning away down the corridor. My heart pounded. I wanted to leap from the chair, scream at Officer Riley, point and shout. "There. She has it. Look." But I didn't. I couldn't. Because Amanda had already won half the battle the moment Michael confessed to me. The police would think I was desperate, clinging to accusations because my son had admitted to tampering. They would think I was paranoid, unstable, maybe even delusional. Amanda had been planting those seeds for months, and now they were sprouting in the minds of everyone around me. I sat frozen in that interview room until Riley returned. His face was unreadable, his voice flat. We'll be reviewing statements and following up with evidence tomorrow. For now, you're free to go. Free. The word didn't feel like freedom. It felt like exile. They released me into the cold Dallas night. And Michael didn't come with me. He stayed with Amanda. He chose her again. I stood in the parking lot alone, clutching my coat around me. The neon buzz of the station sign burning into the darkness like a cruel reminder. Justice wasn't on my side. Not yet. When I got home, the house felt wrong. Quiet, but not peaceful. Heavy, as though the walls themselves knew the weight of betrayal. I moved from room to room, touching Richard's old things, grounding myself in memories of a man who had been strong, decisive, unshakable. He had fought wars in the boardroom. He had built our company from a tiny Dallas lab into a national pharmaceutical empire. And he had taught me, again and again, never let them write your story for you, Clara. Always write it yourself. I whispered those words into the silence. Always write it yourself. And I knew what I had to do. But Amanda moved faster than I anticipated. The very next morning, her face was on the local news. I was sipping bitter coffee, my hands shaking, when the anchor's voice cut through the kitchen air. Local heiress Amanda Clark has come forward with disturbing allegations about her mother-in-law, Clara Clark, former CEO of Clark Pharmaceuticals. I froze, staring at the screen. Amanda sat in front of a camera, crocodile tears sliding down her cheeks. Michael sat beside her, stiff and pale, nodding along like a man trapped in a nightmare he couldn't wake from. She's been unstable for months, Amanda said softly, her voice breaking at just the right places. She's obsessed with control, with power. She accused me of terrible things. She even planted cameras in our home. I was terrified. I am terrified. The footage cut to Amanda handing over the hard drive, my hard drive, to the police as evidence. She even faked recordings to make it look like I tried to hurt her, Amanda continued, her tone shifting just enough to suggest noble concern. But the truth is, I've been trying to protect Michael. Protect myself. She's dangerous. The anchor's voice returned. The Dallas Police Department has confirmed that they are reviewing the recordings. While no formal charges have been filed yet, the investigation is ongoing. I nearly dropped the coffee cup. Amanda had taken the very weapon that should have saved me and twisted it into her shield. She would scrub it, edit it, cut pieces out until the truth was mangled beyond recognition. And Michael? He was sitting there, letting her. My son. My only son. The next week was a blur of whispers and looks. The neighbors who used to wave now avoided my eyes. Old colleagues from the company sent cautious messages, their words dripping with pity, not support. Even the grocery store clerk, who'd known me for 20 years, kept her smile tight and fake. Amanda was winning the court of public opinion. And worse, she was tightening her grip on Michael. Every time I tried to call him, he didn't answer. Every time I left a message, there was silence. Until finally, 3 days after the news report, he showed up at my house. When I opened the door, he looked thinner, exhausted. His tie was crooked, his hands trembling. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Mom, he whispered, I came to say goodbye. The words punched the air from my lungs. Goodbye. I repeated. What are you talking about? He swallowed hard. Amanda and I were moving. To California. She says it's safer there. Away from you. Safer. The word dripped from his lips like poison. I grabbed his arm, desperate. Michael, listen to me. She poisoned me. She's using you. She's using everything Richard built. If you walk away now, she'll destroy everything. He yanked his arm back, his eyes finally flashing. Stop it, Mom. Stop. His voice cracked. You think you're protecting me, but all you've ever done is control me. Dad controlled me. The company controlled me. Amanda's the only one who's ever let me be myself. The silence after that was deafening. I stared at him, barely recognizing the man in front of me. He wasn't the son I raised. He was a stranger wearing my child's face. He turned, walking toward his car without another word. And this time I didn't follow. I just stood there watching the taillights fade into the night, my heart breaking and hardening all at once. Because I realized something in that moment. Amanda thought she had won. Michael thought he was free. The world thought I was finished. But they were all wrong. I wasn't finished. Not even close. If Amanda wanted war, she would get one. And this time, I wasn't going to fight fair. The night Michael drove away for California, I didn't sleep. I sat in Richard's old leather chair, the one that still smelled faintly of his cologne, staring at the darkened television screen. My reflection looked back at me, older, weaker, worn, but behind those tired eyes was a fire Amanda had no idea she had lit. She thought she had broken me. She thought taking Michael, stealing the hard drive, and dragging my name through the mud had left me powerless. But I wasn't powerless. I was angry. And anger, when harnessed carefully, is sharper than any blade. So I made a decision. If Amanda wanted to paint me as the villain, then I'd stop playing the hero. Heroes waited for the truth to save them. Villains took the truth and shoved it down your throat until you choked on it. From that moment, I stopped defending myself, and I started plotting. The next morning, I drove downtown to the one place Amanda never expected me to go, an old law office that Richard had used decades earlier during a messy dispute with Eddie. The receptionist barely looked up when I walked in, her nails clacking against the keyboard. But when I asked for Mr. Garrison, her eyes widened. Mr. Garrison retired years ago, she said, her voice softening. But his son runs the practice now. Do you want me to tell him who's here? I nodded. Minutes later, a man with silver hair and Richard's old lawyer's eyes appeared. Mrs. Clark, he said warmly, shaking my hand. I grew up hearing about you and your husband. What brings you here after all these years? I leaned forward. Amanda. That one word was enough. His face hardened, and he ushered me into his office. For hours, we combed through public records, financial statements, anything tied to Amanda. She had been careful, too careful. No debts, no lawsuits, no obvious scandals. On the surface, she was the perfect wife, the perfect daughter-in-law, the perfect heiress. But I knew better. So I dug deeper. And that's when I found it. Her past. Before Amanda became Amanda Clark, she had another name. Amanda Price. She'd grown up in Arizona, changed her name after marrying Michael, and quietly buried her old life. But buried doesn't mean gone. Court filings revealed a restraining order filed against her 5 years before she met my son. The details were sealed, but the name of the petitioner wasn't. A woman named Sarah Caldwell. My heart raced. This was it, the crack in her perfect mask. Can you find her? I asked. Mr. Garrison smiled grimly. Already on it. 2 days later, I was sitting in a small diner on the outskirts of Phoenix, Arizona, across from a woman who looked like she'd lived 3 lifetimes in one. Sarah Caldwell had deep lines etched into her face and eyes that flicked nervously toward the door every few seconds. When I introduced myself, she flinched at Amanda's name. She's not in Texas, is she? Sarah whispered, clutching her coffee cup, like it was the only thing keeping her steady. She is, I said softly. She's my daughter-in-law, and she's trying to destroy me. Sarah let out a bitter laugh. That sounds like her. Bit by bit, Sarah told me her story. Amanda had been her roommate in college. At first, sweet and friendly, then controlling, manipulative, cruel. Sarah said Amanda borrowed money she never paid back, spread lies that wrecked Sarah's reputation, and eventually tried to poison her cat when Sarah threatened to move out. She told me once, Sarah whispered, her voice shaking, that she didn't care about people, only what she could get from them. She said if someone stood in her way, she'd rather see them dead than lose. A chill went through me. She hasn't changed, I murmured. Sarah leaned closer. Do you want proof? Because I kept everything. The texts, the letters she slipped under my door, even the vet's report about my cat. I nearly cried. For the first time in months, I felt hope. Amanda wasn't untouchable. She had a past, a trail of cruelty, and I was going to use it. Back in Dallas, I began laying my trap. Step 1. Secure Sarah's testimony. Garrison arranged for a sworn statement, notarized and airtight. Step 2. Make Amanda think she had won completely. I stopped fighting back publicly. I let the whispers grow, Let the neighbors turn their backs. Let Amanda feel the glow of her victory. Because people get sloppy when they think they've already won. And Amanda was nothing if not sloppy when she was smug. Sure enough, she reached out to me one evening, calling from California with Michael at her side. Her voice dripped with fake sympathy. "Clara," she purred, "I know this has been hard for you. But Michael and I think it's time for you to let go of the company. Sign over the last of the shares. Live quietly. You'll be happier that way." I almost laughed. Happier? But instead, I said what she wanted to hear. "Maybe you're right." Amanda practically purred with delight. Step 3. Bait the trap. I invited her and Michael back to Dallas for a final dinner. I told them I was ready to sign over the papers. Amanda jumped at the chance. She probably imagined me broken, defeated, crawling at her feet. What she didn't know was that I had Sarah's statement, copies of the restraining order, evidence of her lies, and a hidden guest waiting to walk in at the perfect moment. This dinner would be the night Amanda's empire of lies crumbled. At least that was the plan. But as I set the table, smoothing the cloth with trembling hands, I heard a noise outside. Not Amanda's car. Not Michael's. Something else. When I opened the door, my heart nearly stopped. It wasn't Amanda standing there. It was Eddie, and he was holding a gun. The sight of Eddie standing on my porch with a gun in his hand froze me to the marrow. For a moment, all I saw was the past. Richard standing tall in the courtroom. Eddie red-faced and swearing revenge as the judge dismissed his case. And now here he was, 2 decades later, still burning with the same hatred. The weapon in his hand proof he hadn't let go. "Evening, Clara," he drawled, stepping forward. His grin was all rot and malice. "Mind if I come in?" I steadied myself, forcing my voice to stay calm. "You don't need an invitation if you've already decided to break in." His grin widened. "Sharp tongue. Haven't lost that. Shame Richard isn't here to protect you this time." The weight of the gun gleamed under the porch light. I stepped back slowly, letting him enter. My mind was racing. The trap I'd set for Amanda was delicate, precise, and timed for dinner. But with Eddie here now, everything threatened to shatter before it even began. He shut the door behind him, the click echoing like a coffin lid closing. "You ruined me," he said flatly. "You and your husband. Everything I built you stole." "That's a lie and you know it," I snapped before I could stop myself. His eyes narrowed, and the gun tilted slightly toward me. "Careful. I've been waiting a long time for this." I raised my hand slowly. "If you've been waiting so long, why now? Why tonight?" Eddie chuckled, low and bitter. "Because your darling daughter-in-law promised me something I couldn't refuse. A cut of the company. A chance to watch you burn. Amanda. Of course. She'd gone to him again. He wasn't here by accident. He was part of her plan all along. You really think Amanda will share anything with you?" I said, shaking my head. "She'll use you the way she's used everyone else. Then she'll toss you aside." His smirk faltered for a moment, and I knew I'd struck a nerve. But before I could press further, headlights swept across the window. A car door slammed. Then another. Amanda and Michael. My stomach dropped. Eddie's grin returned. Showtime. Amanda swept in like she owned the place, Michael trailing behind her with that same hollow look in his eyes. She froze when she saw Eddie with the gun. "What the hell are you doing?" she hissed. Eddie tilted his head, finishing what we started. Michael's face drained of color. "Amanda, what is going on?" Amanda's expression hardened, her mask slipping. "Don't be stupid, Michael. You knew Eddie was part of this." "No," he whispered. "I didn't." The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Eddie finally broke it, raising the gun higher. "I'm tired of waiting. Tonight, we end this." I met his eyes, refusing to flinch. "If you kill me, you'll never see a dime. The police will know exactly where to look. Amanda's fingerprints are all over this." Amanda stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Eddie, put the gun down. You're not supposed to kill her." "Not yet." The word yet hit Michael like a slap. He turned to his wife, horror dawning on his face. You really wanted her dead?" Amanda sneered. "Don't act surprised. You knew what we were working toward." Michael staggered back, shaking his head. "No, I thought we were just pushing her out." "Not this." Amanda rolled her eyes. "You're weaker than I thought." Eddie laughed, enjoying every crack forming between them. Guess the lovebirds are having trouble. I watched, silent but alert. Tension was fracturing the alliance right in front of me. And if I was smart, I could drive the wedge deeper. Michael, I said softly, my eyes locking on his. Listen to me. You see it now, don't you? She doesn't love you. She never did. You've been nothing but a pawn. Amanda's head snapped toward me, fury blazing. Shut up. But Michael didn't look away this time. His lips trembled. His hands balled into fists. For the first time, I saw the sun-eyed rays flickering behind the fog of fear. Then Eddie made a mistake. He turned his gun toward Amanda. Maybe she's right, he said slowly. Maybe I don't need you at all. Maybe I take what I want tonight and cut you both out. Amanda gasped, her composure cracking. Don't you dare. Michael stepped between them instinctively. Put it down, Eddie. In the chaos, I made my move. My fingers closed around the heavy brass candlestick on the table beside me. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. One chance. That's all I had. I swung with everything left in me. The candlestick connected with Eddie's wrist. The gun clattered to the floor. But before I could reach it, Amanda lunged faster. She scooped up the gun, spun on her heel, and aimed it directly at me. Her face was cold, calm, deadly. No more games, she said, her voice low. This ends with you in the ground. The room went still. Michael stood frozen between us, torn, his eyes darting from me to Amanda. Eddie clutched his bruised wrist, cursing. And me. I stared down the barrel of the gun, my hand steady, my heart a steel drum. Because I knew something Amanda didn't. Sarah Caldwell was on her way. And when she walked through that door, Amanda's entire world would collapse. If I lived long enough to see it. Amanda's hands were steady on the gun, but her eyes betrayed her. Behind that icy mask, I saw the flicker of fear. Do it, I whispered. If you're so sure you'll win, pull the trigger. But when you do, the cameras will catch it. The world will know what you really are. Her jaw clenched. You're bluffing. I tilted my head slightly toward the ceiling corner. She followed my gaze and, for the first time, noticed the tiny blinking red light. Her eyes widened. That's right, I said softly. You've been on tape this whole time. Michael's head whipped toward me. Wait, what? Amanda hissed, her control slipping. She's lying. It's fake. Don't listen to her. But I could see Michael's doubt thickening like storm clouds. The boy who had once believed every word from Amanda's lips was starting to crumble. And then, the front door opened. The sound was so sharp in the silence that Amanda flinched, the gun wavering. Sarah Caldwell stepped into the room, her presence quiet but powerful, her hands clutching a folder thick with documents. Her eyes landed on Amanda, and I saw years of buried fear surface. But then her chin lifted, and she spoke. Hello, Amanda. Amanda froze. For the first time since this nightmare began, true terror flashed across her face. No, she breathed. You. Yes, Sarah said, her voice steady. It's over. She dropped the folder onto the table. Paper spilled out, restraining orders, text messages, the vet's report. Proof of Amanda's cruelty. Proof of her lies. Proof that her mask had cracks too wide to hide anymore. Michael staggered toward the table, his shaking hands flipping through the papers. His lips moved silently as his eyes scanned the words. Then, slowly, he turned toward his wife. You did all this? His voice was barely audible. Amanda's face twisted, desperation leaking through the cracks in her mask. Michael, listen to me. It's not what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like, he roared, the fury in his voice shaking the room. For a moment, I thought he might finally break free of her grip completely. But Amanda wasn't done. Her eyes snapped to the gun still in her hands. She raised it higher, her breath ragged. If I go down, she hissed, I'm not going alone. Michael froze. Eddie pressed himself against the wall, eyes wide. Sarah gasped. And me. I didn't move. I looked her dead in the eye and whispered, then pull the trigger. But understand this, if you kill me, you kill the only person who ever stood between you and the monster you're becoming. And Michael will never forgive you. Her hand trembled. Michael's voice broke. Amanda, please put it down. For the briefest second, I saw hesitation. I saw the possibility of surrender. But then something in her snapped. With a scream, she swung the gun, not at me but at Sarah. Time slowed. Michael lunged. I moved too, my old body fueled by pure instinct. The candlestick, still heavy in my hand, came down with all the force I had left. The gun fired. Once, twice, shattering a picture frame on the wall. And then Amanda crumpled, the gun slipping from her grasp, clattering across the floor. Silence fell, thick and heavy. I stood over her, my breath ragged, the candlestick trembling in my hands. Amanda groaned, clutching her head where I'd struck. She was alive, but beaten. Michael dropped to his knees, sobbing. Mom, oh God. I didn't see. I didn't want to see. I lowered the candlestick slowly, my chest heaving. It's over, I said, though my voice was little more than a whisper. It's finally over. The police came minutes later, summoned by Sarah, who had called as soon as she entered the house. Eddie was taken away in handcuffs, his face pale and sweating. Amanda screamed, fought, tried to spin her lies, but the evidence, the cameras, and Sarah's testimony sealed her fate. Michael couldn't even look at her as they dragged her away. When the house was quiet again, he turned to me, his face streaked with tears. Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have believed you. I should have, his voice broke. I touched his cheek gently. You were blind because you loved her. Don't let that love turn to hate. Learn from it. Grow from it. He sobbed against my shoulder like he was a boy again, and I held him, my heart breaking and healing all at once. Weeks passed. Amanda was charged with attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy. Eddie faced weapons charges and extortion. The company remained in my control, and for the first time in months, I felt the air in my lungs was my own again. But the scars remained. Michael filed for divorce. He started therapy. He called me every day, sometimes just to hear my voice. The fog was lifting, but it would be a long road. And me, I sat often in Richard's chair, the weight of everything heavy on my shoulders. But I also felt something I hadn't in years. Strength, because I had faced betrayal, heartbreak, and danger. And I hadn't broken. I had endured. And in the end, I had won. To anyone listening, I'll leave you with this. Kindness is a gift, but never let someone mistake it for weakness. Empathy can save a soul, but sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is fight back. I'm 65 years old, and I learned the hardest way that even family can turn against you. But I also learned this: betrayal doesn't define you. How you rise after it does. And rise I did.